Well, good afternoon and welcome to those of you joining us both online and here in person in Brussels. My name is Gabriel Gavin. I'm a reporter with Politico covering energy and the politics of power. Over the past few years, Europe has embarked on its most ambitious energy transition in history, while at the same time balancing dramatic new threats to the supply of oil and gas in the wake of Russia's brutal war in Ukraine. And there are a few people who've been closer to the heart of that crisis than our guest today, the EU's Energy Commissioner, Kadri Simson. So what for some was always seen as this kind of quiet, technocratic beat suddenly became a frontline role in a fight that makes a difference to the lives of people across the continent, to businesses, to industry, to households, and far further afield. So we're going to be talking about how that green transition is being delivered, despite the conflicts raging across the globe, and what might come next. If you'd like to take part in the discussion, you can send through any questions through the Swapcard platform, and you can share your thoughts on social media as we go along. But without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest, Commissioner Simson. Thank you very much for being with us.
Good afternoon.
So, as this is Sustainable Future Week, I feel obliged to start by asking you about that green transition. But at the same time, we're embarking on these multi-billion-dollar transitions at a time of extreme energy crisis. Do you think it's fair to say that progress has been a mixed bag and that there's more that could be done to try and make renewable energy, green power, clean technology a way to transition away from Russian fossil fuels, for example?
I do believe that we have achieved a lot, and despite the difficulties that Russia was able to create due to their dominating role in our energy market, they also forced us to accelerate our green transition. Just yesterday, commissioners had a meeting with Sultan Al Jaber, and when I made my point, I also mentioned that I do believe that Europe has a very solid story to tell the rest of the world, how energy crisis didn't derail us from our track. On the contrary, last year we cut our greenhouse gas emissions by 3%, and it was already 30th year in a row for us cutting our emissions. How we did that, of course, prices played a significant role, but also the public opinion turned to be very favorable towards this transition. I remember 4 years ago when I started my mandate, I thought that the biggest challenge will be public acceptance. And then one of the very first proposals was to create our Just Transition Fund so that we can address these social issues that will rise in mining regions. But now we see that this is a much wider concept, and this is part of our energy security. And that allows us to accelerate green transition significantly.
But it's not the only energy conflict that we face, is it? At the same time, Europe is being battered by increasing competition from countries like China and the United States with its Inflation Reduction Act. We've seen significant producers of things like electrolyzers for hydrogen as a clean fuel choosing to invest the other side of the Atlantic rather than in Europe. You know, is it fair to say that we're in something of a trade war when it comes to winning the jobs and the technologies that are supposed to power that green transition in a way that's going to be profitable for everybody? And you know, is Europe responding to that anywhere near sufficiently at this stage?
I strongly believe that this is very good that other big powers have also committed to climate neutrality. So at first they thought that Europe is a strange actor who is putting forward this climate neutrality target for 2050. Then Americans followed us, and even Chinese do have their target for 2060. And that means that each of us will invest into new solutions. And after investing some of the taxpayers' money, the technology becomes cheaper, and that means that also the third world can afford it. And this is exactly what we will need. Your question about trade war, this is true that we have to learn from the last year's crisis that any dependency is dangerous. But
So critical raw materials, for example, on China.
And even if we are promoting one or another solution, if all the solar panels or majority of solar panels are coming from the single source, then this is dependency, and we have to address that, and we will do that with our Net Zero Industry Act. But at the same time, Europe has benefited due to the fact that we do have open economy. I think that we will never close our borders, but we will diversify our trading partners, and we will create new partnerships.
I mean, but is there enough money being thrown around? I mean, the Americans, in their kind of typical way, have just opened up the floodgates. They don't have the same kind of regulatory or policy frameworks, but they're spending huge sums in incentivizing things through the IRA, through the CHIPS Act. China, as obviously you've covered very closely, has quite likely been ramping up the incentives and the subsidies. You know, are other partners playing fair, and are we being outspent here in Europe?
To be honest, we were the ones who started that, because we responded to the COVID crisis with Next Generation Fund, and 40% of these funds were supposed to go to climate and energy-related projects. So we were the first ones who declared that our policy to avoid possible recession due to COVID will also involve our investments to the future-proof energy solutions. And right now, member states are at this moment, when their plans are approved, they do have these funds, and you can see across Europe projects being built. And that helps us immensely. Also, if you keep in mind that right now, member states have to deliver their upgraded national energy and climate plans. There are only 6 years until 2030, and they have to be able to increase renewable targets significantly. So I think without our additional financing, that would have been impossible.
I mean, another part of the struggle is about cheap energy, right? So China and the US are able to offer manufacturing and industry much cheaper energy, unfortunately, than Europe is able to. Our energy prices tend to be far higher on average. And I mean, is there a risk as well that we've seen Germany introducing new subsidies, or talking about introducing new subsidies to help businesses meet that cost? Is there a risk that poorer EU member states could be disadvantaged, and actually you could see countries like Italy that maybe don't have the national budget to be able to do that? We could see their industry being drawn away to places like Germany. Is that a concern, the kind of intra-EU competition?
I think that the solution is single energy market, where our member states will be sufficiently interconnected, and that means that each and every member state can benefit from schemes that will bring to the consumers more affordable energy prices. But we try to address this issue also with our electricity market design. By promoting power purchase agreements, so that not only big buyers but also small and medium enterprises will have access to this scheme that brings predictable prices for years to come. And this has another benefit too. The project promoters will know that they will have a certain flow of revenues in years to come, because it was not so far away. It was only 2020 when suddenly our demand due to COVID restrictions was very low, and across Europe we saw electricity prices close to zero. So the prices will remain volatile, but we have to make sure that there is some predictability for our industry.
Yeah, and there's been tremendous success in terms of building Europe's energy security from a position where we were incredibly dependent on Russia to one where we're much less so. I mean, Europe's gas storage is at 99.65% full as of today, I think. So that's obviously an area where there has been significant work. But at the same time, people's energy bills are still high, right? You know, if you're a working family, if you're a business that's considering amping up production, energy costs can be prohibitive. When can Europeans expect things to kind of get back to normal? When can they expect to have the same kind of lower energy prices that they would get if they were living in the US or in Beijing?
Well, here is the question, what is normal? So before war, 40% of natural gas that we consumed came from Russia, from single supplier. And then that gave them power to start this manipulation. So they played these volumes, then after one country after another was cut off. And when we got in 2021, a year before war, 155 billion cubic meters of Russian gas, then I predict that this year we will get 20 via pipeline and another 20 as LNG. So we have lost more than 100 billion cubic meters. We have replaced that with alternative supplies. We have cut our consumption, but we needed not only to replace lost Russian volumes, we also needed to fill our storage. And well, indeed, this relatively comfortable situation right now that we do have is also due to the fact that in our underground storages we do have another 100 BCM. So this was a huge challenge. Now we have been able to cut the prices compared to the last year significantly. The gas market will stabilize if demand and supply are balanced. We know we have mapped all the new production volumes globally that will come online. We know that this winter and next winter they will still be challenging, but then we will take care of our consumption without any Russian supply needs. We are actually ready already since last January that Russia will cut the last volumes too, and for that purpose we do have these solidarity measures in place. So despite the fact that some of the companies are still receiving Russian gas, if they will lose that tomorrow, this doesn't cause any major trouble anymore.
But you think that Europeans need to accept that for the time being, energy bills are going to be higher?
I do believe that step by step, the electricity prices are coming down due to several factors. One of these is that we will have more renewables online. Another one is that using our new legislation, households and companies will have options, what kind of pricing schemes they will opt for. And I also, coming from Estonia, do believe that some price signals are useful, just to send a message that there are peak hours when we should address our consumption.
Generally,
that helps immensely if some price signals are still sending these messages to our consumers.
I mean, your own country, Estonia, has obviously been at the heart of another kind of intrigue when it comes to Europe's energy security recently with the Baltic Connector outage. Obviously, the kind of twists and turns of that story about anchors and vessels is all still being worked out. But do you think that there needs to be a greater awareness, or do you believe that Europe's energy infrastructure is under attack, as well as the weaponization of supplies? Is there the targeting of infrastructure of pipelines? Is that something that has been at the forefront of your mind in your job?
Of course, this is one of the risks when we are preparing ourselves for winter. We know that there are big unknowns like weather or global demand, but also the possible sabotage acts against our infrastructure. They represent huge risks, and since last year we have set up a task force, and with member states we are monitoring all these subsea interconnections, both electricity cables, data cables, and gas pipelines. Every time when I have dialogues with our trading partners, for example, a couple of weeks ago we had a meeting with Norwegian minister. We had addressed also this issue because that can create lots of trouble.
So we have the 12th sanctions package coming up. That's up for discussion over the next week or so. As far as we understand, it's going to talk about tightening restrictions and closing loopholes and tinkering around the edges. But meanwhile, Russia's oil and gas revenue, its profits have risen and risen and risen. The Russian economy remains relatively resilient in most aspects, although it shows a lot of signs of overheating Is it fair to say that not enough has been done to enforce the price cap on oil, for example? Europe continues to buy large amounts of Russian LNG, something that you've called to end. Are you disappointed that there doesn't seem to be enough consensus among member states, particularly Hungary, to kind of go further and actually address the structural things that mean that Russia is still earning vast revenues?
Their revenues on oil are, well, increasing again, but not gas revenues. So they do not have sufficient alternative transport routes for natural gas, and that means that they cannot circumvene our they cannot find a replacement for our market in such a way like they have found alternative markets for oil products.
Although we continue to be the market for that oil product, it's just that it gets refined into petroleum or diesel or jet fuel in India or Turkey or China, and then ends up in Europeans' cars and planes. Do we need to look seriously again at whether we want to continue funding Russia's war and whether there's anything we can do to cut off those funds?
Indeed, we have to. And for gas, we will have very soon a tool at our disposal. If we will finalize a decarbonized gas market package, then we will give governments a right to restrict Russian LNG shipments towards European terminals. Now on oil, yes, 12th package will address this issue, how Russians have been able to circumvene some of the price caps.
I mean, the vast majority of Russian oil is trading above the price cap. It's tending towards more $80 than 60. Is there anything realistically that Europe can do that would stop that?
At the initial phase, the price cap worked, so we really saw that Russian revenues from oil decreased by 1/3. Now they have been able to replace European vessels with shadow fleet, mainly tankers that are in the end of the life cycle. So yes, that means we have to upgrade our sanctions again. So as easy as it is, we never thought that this is something where we delivered everything and now it works forever. So we were always very clear that if we will find that there are loopholes, we will.
But it's not so much a loophole in some cases, right? So Russia's talking about tripling its production capacity for gas, and at the same time, countries like Spain and Belgium have dramatically increased their import of Russian LNG. Does that need to stop? Do these countries need to get serious about implementing the spirit of, if not the technicality, but the spirit of the bloc's position on Russia?
Well, it compares. It depends. Against what year you compare Russian LNG production volumes, because we tend to compare it against 2021. And I remind you what happened in 2021. 2021, Russia started to manipulate our gas markets, left our underground gas storage empty, didn't deliver enough gas, and that triggered the increase of prices even before the war. So they used their LNG volumes to manipulate with our markets. That created this uncertainty, and step-by-step prices increased.
So is it right that countries...
So this was a year when they didn't deliver what they could have.
Sure, but is it right then that countries like Belgium and Spain are buying more Russian gas when we know it gets weaponized and we know the proceeds go to fueling the conflict in Ukraine and the murder of Ukrainians?
But I think that at current moment, when our storage is close to 100% full, and world seas are full of LNG tankers waiting for us starting the heating season, everybody understands that we do not need this Russian LNG.
So you'd like to see countries actually reflect that in how they go about procuring? Yes,
and I have to admit that we don't have sanctions in place for LNG, but I have brought up this issue each time when I meet energy ministers.
Is it just a lack of support from member states?
No, well, some of the energy ministers, like Rob Jetten in Netherlands, has addressed it very clearly to the industry that let's stop buying Russian LNG, and he was very vocal about that. The same goes with current presidency, Teresa Ribera Spain,
Yeah.
sending their buyers very clear message that please
Yeah.
stop this activity.
And then, for example, you have Gazprom saying that Hungary is potentially buying more supplies throughout the winter. How does that fit in with the spirit of the bloc's position on Russia and Ukraine? Is this something that they should be allowed to do, that we should say member states, this is a decision for them? Or is it time for the Commission really to say we need to come to a collective position?
Yes, at the very moment when together with Hungary we will have unanimity, then we will have this collective position. But right now I think that even Hungary knows that by continuing this activity, they grant Russia the right to manipulate their market. And to avoid this risk, even Hungary has filled their underground gas storage to maximum level. So that shows that you don't trust your supplier as much as willing to leave your storage half empty. So all the member states are very well prepared if someone still tries to use this leverage that they do have. But I think that step by step, the demand and supply at global markets on the LNG side will work on our benefit. And that means that Russia will also see that due to the existing sanctions, they don't have access to technological solutions that they will need to keep up their production volumes.
So in your opinion, the age of Russian dominance over Europe's energy markets, that's gone, that's history, and we now just need to push out the rest. Is that fair, or?
Yes, I think so. And as a matter of fact, we still receive some Russian gas via pipelines, via Turkey and Ukraine. And Ukrainian leaders have been very clear that the very moment when this transition agreement expires, they will not start any negotiations with the aggressor.
And you wouldn't, because I've interviewed the Ukrainian energy minister about this exact subject, and I've always wondered whether the door is open for European countries to negotiate that, and Ukraine simply to allow it to happen. They've never ruled out the idea that, for example, Germany could go to Moscow and come to that agreement. But you don't think that will happen. You wouldn't welcome that as a potential option.
Well, Germany right now is not receiving anything via Ukraine, so why should they? They, on the contrary, have been able to fill their underground gas storage. They have been able to build very fast floating LNG terminals. They are doing their utmost to find alternative suppliers, not only for gas, but also they are creating new partnerships. And together with Germany and H2 Global, we plan to launch first green hydrogen international call. So I think that it is up to the political leaders, but right now I know one political leader in Europe who is shaking hands with war criminal, but that's it.
And is that a position you've impressed on your Hungarian counterparts?
Yes, of course. Well, this is not at their interest to continue this dependence, and the announcement that they will build another nuclear power plant with Russian technology, this is only strengthens then their dependency. So our clear request to them is that, like other member states who are still using Russian technology in their nuclear fleet, they have to prepare a plan how to diversify fuel supply.
I mean, that's fascinating, and I'm aware it's been a long day for everyone, but I want to just ask you one quick question before I let everyone head towards the roundtables and then the refreshment table. But your own party, the Estonian Centre Party, is no longer in the governing coalition. We're coming to the end of the life cycle of this commission. You're young, you're ambitious, presumably. You've held an incredibly important job at an incredibly important time. What's next for you?
Since we had energy crisis last year, I know how long is 1 year and what a big difference 1 year makes. So I do believe that when Ursula von der Leyen will be granted second mandate, then we don't have anything like end of the mandate of Commission. We will work 24/7 on the very last day of our mandate, and that means another 12 months.
Sure, but then at that point, the checks stop landing in the bank account, right? I mean, should Estonian politics be prepared for the return of Kadri Simson? Is that the next move, or do you think you'd like to go more international, continue to work in the energy space, for example?
Most likely I will return home because Estonia is the best place where to live.
Well, there we go. That's certainly pleased the crowd. We heard London was very good earlier as well, so I'll hark back to that. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Simpson. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you to everyone who joined here in person and online. I'd like to invite up my colleague Jan to say a few words to draw a line under today and all its excellent panels. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I will take my bag.
Thanks very much, and thank you to Commissioner Simpson for slightly to the side of the green sustainability, but in a sense also part of the same theme of the whole green transition. One of the efforts is going to be to lessen the EU's dependency as it decarbonizes, electrifies. There's obviously the danger of relying on Chinese technology and raw materials that the EU does not control. And then, as we can see with what the Commission was saying, the dangers to Europe of being overly reliant on unstable and autocratic regimes. I'd like to thank all of you for taking part in this afternoon's summit. I thought that broadly the mobility sessions really highlighted the challenges facing the green transition in transport. From panel to panel, we saw the clash between industry and campaigners, and often with the Commission kind of stuck in the middle, which is probably going to result in a classic Brussels fudge in the resulting policy, a solution that doesn't go quite far enough for green advocates, but dismays industry. The panel on raising Europe's emissions ambitions, where the predictions of an impact range from very rosy job creating to a job sacrificing catastrophe. So thank you again for being with us today. And I'd like to thank all of the speakers and all the moderators who took part in today's session, and the partners for making this summit possible, our leading partners, Amazon, Coca-Cola, and Plastics Europe, our presenting partners, Bayer, Google, McDonald's, and SQM, our networking partner, A2A, and our visibility partner, EU City Kelk. And we're going to have 2 roundtable discussions followed by a networking reception in the main networking room outside. We hope to see you there, and thanks again for your online participation. There's going to be 1 roundtable on the multimodal digital mobility services in the room called Creative Room 3, and that'll be led by Mari Eccles, who is our aviation reporter. And then there's a second roundtable on e-fuels led by Josh Posaner, who dominated the early part of the afternoon with his panels, and that's taking place in a room called Into the Box. We're back tomorrow for more discussions. We'll be looking at clean tech and circular economy, and we get rolling at 9:20 in the morning. Have a great evening, and again, I'm Jan Czynski, Politico's Senior Policy Editor. Thanks again.
This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.